Well, Skurlock to me was interesting because he was one of the major photographers headquartered or based in Washington, D.C. He photographed some of the major black figures of the last century. So when I found a Skurlock and that it was of a black military officer, then that was a merger then of both my interest in history and art. Once I got serious about collecting, then I started dealing with dealers a lot. So there were many dealers who, before they would put things in their catalog, would offer them to me, sometimes in bulk. For the Skurlock piece, I was offered a box full of material. And the highlight, according to the person who offered me, was several other items, and that's what I paid for. But when I got the box and opened it up and found out there was a Skurlock, I would have paid 10 times as much for that one item as I paid for the whole group. For the Currier knives, it was one of the first pieces where I felt it was very significant. It was one of the earliest Currier knives that dealt with black soldiers marching into Dixie. So it obviously referenced a northern black soldier in the Civil War, of which, quite frankly, that was the minority. The vast majority of black soldiers were from the border states and the slave states. So it was interesting that they chose to memorialize the northern black soldier. But even now, a lot of people think of Glory and think of the 54th Massachusetts and think maybe that's all there was. But that roughly 1,000 person regiment was 1/200th of the total of blacks who served in the military. I started thinking about what I was going to do with the collection. Selling it was never, ever an option, never anything I wanted to do. And so I was open to the idea of donating it to a museum when I was approached by Alex Wise from Richmond, who was putting together a museum in Richmond. So I'm delighted that during my lifetime, I'm able to see the result of my collecting because it helps to inform a very wide public about the role that blacks played in the military during the Civil War and before and after. After I gave away my collection, I thought I would miss it. But the feeling that I have is really not about that at all. It's about the joy I get, especially every time I visit Richmond and go to the museum, of seeing other people looking at the items that I spent many, many hours searching and finding, and seeing how they're displayed in a way that helps tell the story of the role that blacks played in defending, creating America. One of the reasons I concentrated on blacks in the military was because of my own Vietnam service. And it's interesting because by and large, I don't talk about my Vietnam service except to other veterans. Even today, 50 years later, it's still a very painful experience talking about it. However, I find that by collecting things having to do with blacks in the military, it helps me to deal with my own feelings toward war in general, and especially about that very unpopular war. So one of the things that is results from that is I'm active in Veterans Affairs. I don't think we can do enough to thank our veterans and our servicemen and women for the sacrifices they and their families make.